So you're live.
Thank you. So I never got that screen.
Nope.
That didn't work on mine.
I had downloaded the Zoom app onto my desktop, and it looks different than what you did from the internet. Maybe that would help.
Am I live?
Let me see.
But I think wait, well, hold on. Share my screen.
I think it's coming. Oh, there are 8 comments. Thanks. I'll be in the group soon. I wrote boost, right? Saying boost. Takes a second.
I think it's working.
I think so too. There you are. You're live.
I'm here. Hi guys. All right. Had do a little computer swap. For whatever reason, mine was being finicky. I apologize about the delay. Hello. So my name is Joy Hawk. For those of you who don't know me, I've been an integrative health coach for coming up on 10 years now, which is kind of crazy. At the end of the day, I'm just a mom with 3 kids that has fumbled my way through to try to figure all this out. I've been teaching immunity classes for a couple years now. I've given this presentation in a couple corporations, in the functional medicine practice where I work. So my goal is that you'll find it helpful. So I think one of the first things that I want to talk about actually is this myth is that we have a flu season. Really what I believe is it's more like a season where we consume more sugar and we are outside and getting way less vitamin D, right? I think that a lot of people are under the false assumption that illness is inevitable. This actually is not true. So my goal here is tonight is to share a little bit about what I have learned really in the 13 years since I've been a mom. And the reason why I kind of fell into this is, you guys, when I first had a baby, I thought this, like I thought being sick was just part of like what you had to deal with as a mom. My daughter was sick from really October through March. I'm not even kidding. She was sick every single week. Ear infections, strep, stomach bugs, croup, you name it. It was awful. And the worst part about it is every single thing that she caught, I then caught. It was much harder than it needed to be. And at the time I was surrounded by doctors who told me, well, this was normal. So I just thought it was normal. And I started to dread winter. In the past few years, I've spent a lot of time, money, digging deep into my own nutrition and wellness. My goal was really to heal my daughter. I ended up learning a ton in the process. Like I said, I went to nutrition school. I now work in a functional medicine practice with Dr. Kat, and I've taken more courses on this than I can count. I've really been mentored by some of the best natural healers that are around, and conducted more than my fair share of experiments on my kids. So I'm going to share tonight what I have learned. Fast forward today, what I wanted to tell you though, is that we rarely get sick. I now have my kids are 13, 11, and 7. The 2 youngest have never had a need for antibiotics. They've never had strep. They've never had an ear infection. And what I have learned, the biggest thing that I want you to take away tonight is prevention is really the key to boosting immunity. Okay, so let's dig into this a little bit. The immune system, really what that is it's the body's system. It's our natural defense against infectious invaders, organisms, what have you. It's made up of a network of cells, tissues, and organs that work together to protect the body. And staying healthy is not nearly as hard or as expensive, I think, as sometimes we are led to believe. A lot of what I'm going to share, most of it is probably free. It is simple. It just takes a little bit of commitment on your part. The highlight reel of all of this, and I'm going to dig deeper, but if you just want to watch this for the next 30 seconds and then go, really it's eat more leafy greens and whole foods, be moving your body, reduce your stress, sleep. You guys, I could not say how many people I see eating all of the right things. They are exercising, doing all of the things, but their stress and their sleep are way out of whack. We cannot have optimal health if we do not have really good quality sleep. Reducing that sugar way down, and then consider chiropractic and also activation. So let's talk a little bit about sugar. I actually love this. I think that most people sort of have this vague understanding that sugar is not ideal to eat in large amounts, right? But we probably don't fully understand why. I think next to stress, sugar might be the biggest cause of disease. If you guys have not watched the movie Fed Up, I highly, highly recommend it. So let's kind of discuss what the processed white sugar does to your body. I'm not talking about maple syrup. I'm not even necessarily talking about like organic cane sugar. I'm talking about the stripped down white, no nutrients whatsoever type of sugar, okay? The one that you would find in donuts. If you eat, like, let's just pretend that we're going to eat one donut. I think we all would probably agree that there are not any nutrients in a donut, at least not the kind that you would buy at Dunkin' Donut or in the donut shop. And in order for your body to process that one donut, your body has to use minerals that are already in the body. And to process a mere 1 gram of sugar, your body is going to use 56 grams of magnesium, as well as calcium and other minerals and nutrients that your body needs to function optimally. So not only are you not gaining any nutrients with the donut, but you're actually losing the nutrients that you've already required in your reserves. So maybe this isn't a big deal if you're already eating a ton of nutrient, really dense foods, and you have like an optimally working gut. But it's a very big deal for a person who is a selective eater. It is a very big deal for somebody who already has gut issues, a very big deal for someone that's not absorbing their nutrients and is already mineral deficient. So for every tablespoon of sugar consumed because of what I just mentioned, your immune system can be depressed for up to 6 hours. Okay. So I really think when we talk about flu season, it's actually because starting in Halloween, if you look, like, that's when flu season really kicks in. From Halloween through January, I think most people are on one giant sugar binge. So another thing that's really important to talk about is food intolerances. And I'm not going to go too deep into this, but just to kind of cover the basics, is for every tip that I could give you, for every supplement or activator I could recommend, none of this is probably going to matter that much if you don't get this next part right, okay? We have to be willing to look at our food. And I'm not suggesting that you need to spend hours meal prepping or restricting yourself or feeling deprived at any way, shape, or form, but you do have to figure out what works for your body. And if you're somebody or someone who's like sick all the time, this is really, really critical for you. And I just want to share this one little example. Is when my daughter was a baby, I kept calling the doctor about her rashes, and the doctors kept telling me it was normal. And then when she was 18 months old, I finally went rogue and I took her to an allergist without a referral. This was after the fact that we had been in the ER by this point multiple times because she had a skin rash. They kept telling me to put steroids on it. And steroids once in a while are fine, but when you have a baby, like, you can't cover your baby head to toe in steroids every single day. Like, I didn't know much, but I knew that wasn't right. And they kept saying it was normal. And I was like, no, there's something going on here. There is a root cause. And so it turns out she was actually allergic to dairy. And when I pulled the dairy, she started to improve. But the road to her complete healing was longer than just that, because it took, like, she had taken multiple rounds of antibiotics, which had damaged her gut and therefore impacted her immunity. And the more that I learned, more that I dug into this, the better she got. She eventually stopped catching every single virus simply by making that one, I'm not going to say that only one change, but that one simple change of pulling the dairy improved things immensely for her. It's also why I'm so passionate about this topic. I feel like the more educated we are, the better armed we are to advocate for ourselves. So let's dig in. Let's understand the difference between a food allergy and an intolerance. An allergy, a true allergy, is an immune system response to a food protein, and it triggers a reaction almost immediately. So symptoms could include hives, itching, swelling, vomiting, diarrhea, nausea, and in some cases, it can be potentially life-threatening. Sometimes food allergies can be less obvious and can be characterized by colic. I think most people think with a baby that has colic or cries all the time, it's normal. It is not. Reflux, same thing, that's not normal. Eczema, not normal. Chronic diarrhea, failure to thrive, child not gaining weight, none of this normal. Recent studies have actually found that up to 40 to 50% of eczema cases in young children are triggered by a food allergy. 8 foods in general are the biggest sources. That's not to say that it's the only thing, but the 8 most common are milk, eggs, peanuts, tree nuts, fish, shellfish, wheat, and soy. So that's the food allergy. A food intolerance is slightly different. It's an adverse reaction to a food that does not involve the immune system, and reactions can be immediate or delayed up to 20 hours after a food's eaten. Symptoms of a food intolerance are sometimes vague, and people don't always make the connection. It can be bloating or gas, diarrhea, nausea, indigestion, eczema, asthma. Those are just some common ones. They often go undiagnosed and mimic symptoms of other medical conditions. You can find out what you're intolerant to by asking your health practitioner for an IgG or IgA test. I'm a big fan, particularly in my health coaching practice, of actually testing to find out what's going on. Otherwise, you can spend a lot of time stabbing in the dark with an intolerance. It turns out my daughter was actually intolerant to eggs, sun butter, and spinach at one point. And when the list is long, that's often a symptom of a leaky gut and an underlying issue. So that's just kind of high level on intolerance and allergies, but it brings me into talking about gut health, which is really kind of the secret sauce. Our immunity is truly dependent on the health of our gut. And I think, unfortunately, it's really common to overlook the health of our gastrointestinal system, even though it contains 10 times more health determining bacteria than the rest of our body. There's actually 100 trillion organisms in the gut that make up 3/4 of our immune system, and taking antibiotics can totally wipe out these microorganisms, requiring obvious dedication and time to repopulate our gut with necessary bacteria. This is where fermented foods and probiotics are really, really critical. Not all probiotics are created equal. When there is a significant gut issue going on, again, I think it's important to be tested. You can get something, it's a stool test called a GI map, and you'll know exactly which strains of bacteria maybe you have too much of or too little of. So again, I don't like stabbing in the dark always. But probiotics, and I'd say prebiotics too, are an absolute must for those who want to improve immunity in general and are not eating a diet rich in fermented foods. They're best taken on an empty stomach, and with prebiotic rich foods like bananas, asparagus, honey, oatmeal, or sweet potato are good food sources of prebiotics. One thing that I'm gonna say is most yogurt is not a good, particularly the kind that you would just get at the regular grocery store, is not actually a good source of true probiotics. You need raw foods where the bacteria and the organisms are alive. So talking about sleep, actually, it's incredibly simple, and I think it's so commonly overlooked as we're considering our health journey and our immunity. Particularly when kids are in the flow of school, I don't think that we should minimize the stress of their schedules. It can take all of their resources to manage their day, and it's even more important to build them back up when they get home. This again means the nutrient-rich food, some supplements or activators like probiotics, the prebiotics, NRF2, and ensuring enough time to sleep. An adult should get at least 8 hours of sleep, and those with adrenal fatigue or high stress require even more. You guys, 6.5 hours is not enough sleep, okay? So when you're looking at like, maybe I don't sleep well, the biggest thing that I could tell you that has impacted my own, like our family's sleep quality is turning off our Wi-Fi at night. It's not hard. It's literally going to the router. I unplug it. We're sleeping. We shouldn't be using it. You can use alarm clocks instead of a phone, or you can turn your phone on airplane mode and still have access to certain features without getting that Wi-Fi. Stress, the food intolerance, like I mentioned before, that can be another reason why somebody's not sleeping. Imbalanced blood sugar, if there's somebody that's getting up a lot in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, or if you're hungry, that's a blood sugar issue. And then again, the lack of minerals. So stress, when we're stressed, our body puts out that flight or fight hormones, which impact something called our sympathetic nervous system. This is actually what causes adrenal fatigue. Children can get adrenal fatigue. Actually, fun random fact is my oldest daughter was born with low cortisol levels and adrenal fatigue, because I had such severe adrenal fatigue when I was pregnant with her that my body it needed cortisol so badly, so it pulled from her reserves. Poor thing. So let's talk a little bit about what we can do for the different types of stress. One of my favorite things that's such like the low-hanging fruit is reducing our oxidative stress. Oxidative stress are the free radicals that are in our air. It's the Wi-Fi. It's the pesticides that, your neighbor or their golf course or the farm nearby you is probably spraying. It's whether you eat organic food or not. Reducing that oxidative stress is going to, actually, I just posted, if you want to check it out, there is an article in the group, peer-reviewed study that talks about how reducing oxidative stress using the NRF2 actually prevents flu. I think it's compliant for me to say that because it's in the article. So I would definitely follow up and look at that post. I think there's only so much we can do to mitigate lifestyle stress, to look at your relationships, your job, those kinds of things. Sure, we should all be meditating, we should be sleeping, but I can tell you, as a mom of 3 who has a business, and like managing my own health and my kids' health and their social lives. 13-year-old has a much larger social life than I do. That, it's easy to say to manage my stress. Reducing the oxidative stress via the NRF2 activation is hands down the easiest, most simple thing that I can do, and has been extremely impactful in our health of my whole family, actually. So, okay, you have a sick kid, what do you do? Or you're sick, what do you do? We are conditioned, right, to help, and we want to do something that's totally normal. I know for me that dosing with Tylenol made me feel like a really effective, doting, good mama bear. I was doing my job. I had absolutely no idea that I was actually preventing her immune system from doing its job. So Tylenol depletes something called glutathione. It's one of the master antioxidants. We need good levels of glutathione, so we don't want to use Tylenol. That's number one. I treat the child. I don't treat the fever. Fever is the immune system doing its job. Okay. So the body temperature goes up because the body is recognizing, oh, I need to fight. You don't want to stifle that response that the body has. We can trust our body. Fever in general, and there are some articles, check with your pediatrician. It took me a long time of kind of like deprogramming myself to really feel confident that I don't have to be afraid of a fever. The exceptions are if the child has, a history of seizures, like febrile seizures, obviously check with your doctor. A head injury is not something to mess with, but in general, the body's the fever isn't going to go higher than the body can handle. My kids, back before we started activating, did actually get the flu. We all had swine flu or H1N1. That was really fun. not so much. My daughter's fever hit almost 105, and that was scary for me, for sure. But you're looking for the symptoms. So if the child is in pain, or they have lethargy or something like that, like those are the symptoms you want to treat. But I think a lot of times, particularly young kids, they pop out and they'll have a fever of 102 and they're running around, they're playing. You don't have to worry. Obviously check with, I'm not a doctor, check with your doctor, but in general, that is, the fever is the body's way of doing its job. And if you bring down the fever, the body has to work harder to raise it back up, and you are actually prolonging the sickness and the fever. So what do you do when you get sick? I'm a huge fan of homeopathy. We have some brilliant homeopaths here in this group. I'm actually hoping that maybe we can do an event in the future on homeopathy. In the meantime, I'm a big fan of elderberry. You can buy it or you can make it. I find it's more cost effective to make it. I actually don't feel the need to take it every day. I see that a lot, that people are taking it like October through February every day. I use it if I know that my kids are going to be flying, or if it's like smack in the middle of flu season and my kids are in school with people with the flu, I might be more diligent and give it to them more often then. But in general, I use it only when we start to see something coming on. If you are going to buy it, you want to read the labels. Not all are created equal. Again, you want to make sure that there is not sugar in your elderberry syrup, because you are defeating the purpose for the reasons that we talked about earlier. Vitamin C, that's always a good one. I still choose in general to use like oranges, citrus fruits and things like that in fruit. Sometimes orange juice, just make sure that you're choosing an orange juice that is of quality and has folate, not folic acid in it. Fire cider, if you guys remind me, I can actually drop a recipe in here to make it, but it takes a month to ferment, so I'm a big fan of actually buying it myself. Hand washing, you guys, I think this is something that's really overlooked. We have a habit in our house of every time we get home, we wash our hands. I just got my kids in the habit of that. When we have guests, like kids coming off the bus or for a play date or something, I ask my kids and their friends to wash their hands when they get home. I personally really like the Thieves soap, we use something called Branch Basics, and then drop some Thieves oil into that soap. I really like that. I'm not a fan of the antibacterial soaps. I think that does more harm than good. Again, the sleep, essential oils. There's lots of people out there that can talk to you and probably are far more educated on that than I am. I will say the first time I was exposed to essential oils was when my daughter was probably about 6 months old. Because she was sick all the time, I was like your perfect audience, and we started putting Thieves on the bottom of her feet. She was young. I don't know if that's smart or if you're supposed to do that, but I did it back then because I was learning and I didn't know better. And I did notice a difference. She still got sick, but less often. And then there's something, an immunity broth that is, I know everyone's going to ask me for the recipe, so maybe I can write it here in the comments later, but it is 10 shiitake mushrooms, 1 white onion. I'm going to have to find this. Oh, you know what? I'm saving myself. I posted this recipe in the group already, actually. So if someone reminds me, I can tag you in that, but that is posted in this group already. So I know I talked fast. I was trying to be mindful of the time. I have no idea how long I've been talking, but I hope it was helpful. If you have questions, I'll try to do my best to go through the comments and look at those and answer those for you. But you guys, in general, like the biggest things: sleep, hand washing, chiropractic. We'll bring Dr. Kat in here another time to maybe talk about chiropractic and how that helps with immunity, and just overall like optimizing health in general. But the sleep, the hand washing, and like really reducing the sugar, and watching and making sure that kids are actually eating fruits and vegetables and whole foods makes a significant difference. It's not hard. It's not expensive. It's just kind of like, I view it as it's a lifestyle personally, but I think it depends kind of where you're at. Take baby steps if you're new to this. And then if you are interested in the activation, you can go look at the article that I mentioned in the group, ask the person who added you to this event to share more information about that if you want it. Thanks, you guys. I hope this was helpful.